this man is going to be humiliated beyond belief.
Yeah.
He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want, and they will be destroyed forever. They will be destroyed. June is going to lose Jordy. She will have no right to ever see him again.
Yeah.
That's a fact, Dave. That's what's
Does that help?
Michael's career will be over.
Does that help Jordy?
Michael's career will be over.
And does that help Jordy?
That's irrelevant to me.
I just wonder, is it over? You're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. I think this is really the key thing people want to know, that there are not going to be more of these sleepovers in which people have to wonder.
Nobody wonders when kids sleep over at my house.
But
Nobody
are they
wonders.
over? Are you going to watch out for it now?
Watch out for
just
what?
for the sake of the children and for
No,
everything
because
you've been through?
it's all moral and it's all pure. I don't even think that way. It's not what's in my heart.
So you'll
I would
do it
never,
again?
ever. Do what again?
I mean, you'll have a child
Of
sleeping
course.
over.
They want.
Yes.
It's on the level of purity and love and just innocence, complete innocence. If you're talking about sex, then that's a nut. That's not me. Go to the guy down the street because it's not Michael Jackson. It's not what I'm interested in.
Okay, we're going to take a break now.
On a hot Los Angeles day in the May of 1992, Michael Jackson's car broke down on Wilshire Boulevard. A short distance away laid a car rental agency, owned by a man by the name of David Schwartz. Upon seeking David's services, the owner is in awe of the fact that the king of pop is in his rental shop. David presents Michael with an offer. He would let Michael rent a car free of charge if Michael called his stepson, who was a huge fan, in return. Michael agreed, calling the stepson a couple of days later. The boy was thrilled and his family became friends with Michael. The boy in question was Jordan Chandler, who would become the first ever accuser of Michael Jackson. From May of 1992 through to January of 1993, Michael kept in contact with Jordan and his mother June over the telephone whilst he was travelling internationally on his Dangerous World Tour. According to the Chandlers in later recollections, Michael called the family about 8 to 10 times during this period, estimating at about once a month. June Chandler confirmed that she was present with her son throughout all of these phone calls. Whilst Michael was on a break from touring, he came home to his infamous Neverland Ranch in Southern California, where he then invited Jordan, his younger sister, and his mother to visit. The Chandlers didn't visit again until March of 1993. June recalls on several occasions Jordan asking her if he could sleep in Michael's bedroom because all of the other kids were. She didn't allow him to sleep in there, but to play in there with the other kids until 2 a.m. before returning to the guest room he was staying in. On March 28, 1993, Michael invited June, Jordan, and Jordan's sister to Las Vegas, where they would stay at the Mirage Hotel. This also marked the moment that the Chandlers began their string of frequent visits to Neverland Ranch, Michael's Century City condo, and accompanied him on trips in and out of the US. According to the Chandlers, the trip to Las Vegas was the beginning of Jordan sharing a bedroom with Michael. After returning from Las Vegas in early April of the same year, the Chandlers spent another 5 days at Neverland Ranch. June Chandler stated that during a period between April and May of 1993, Michael stayed over at the Chandler family home several times and slept in the same room as Jordan. On May 9th, Michael invited the Chandlers with him to Monaco, where he was awarded at the World Music Awards on May the 12th. The family attended the ceremony with Michael, and afterwards they flew over to Paris and spent 3 days at Euro Disney, and on May 16th the four of them flew back to Los Angeles. 4 days later, on May the 20th, 1993, marked the day that Michael Jackson was first introduced to Jordan's biological father, Evan Chandler. Evan Chandler owned a dental practice in Beverly Hills, but was also actively pursuing a career as a screenwriter. June Chandler later confirmed that before Michael was a part of their lives, Evan never made an effort to see their son. There are accounts of Evan having a violent temper and an abusive nature. In a 1994 article for GQ magazine, a friend of the Chandler family had claimed that one of the reasons June left Evan in 1985 was because of his temper. In the same article, the writer detailed an event in which Evan had physically attacked David Schwartz. Needless to say, Michael Jackson in the equation or not, Evan Chandler wasn't somebody you would want to be around. A short time after meeting Evan Chandler, Michael Jackson invited him to his Century City condo in Los Angeles, followed by an invite from Evan for Michael to spend a weekend at his house with Jordan and Evan's side of the family. Since his divorce from June, Evan had remarried and had more kids. On May 25, 1993, the National Enquirer published a story with the headline, "Michael Jackson's Secret Family." The story was tipped to them by somebody on the Chandler's side. In 2004, Evan's brother, Ray Chandler, claimed in his book that this was the sister of one of June's closest friends that sold the story to the tabloids. In this article, Michael is almost described as Jordan's new father, at the very least depicting him as a father figure to the young boy. Towards the end of May, Michael spent Memorial Day weekend at Evan Chandler's house with Evan's side of the family and Jordan. Evan had of course seen the previous tabloid story, and according to those involved, he wasn't the slightest bit amused. According to Ray Chandler, this was when Evan started to have quote-unquote suspicions that Michael had sexually molested Jordan. Ray Chandler once again revealed in his book that Evan started to share concerns with June that their son might be gay around June 9th, 1993. June said she wouldn't care if that was the case. But according to Ray, Evan had interpreted this in the following, quoting Ray Chandler, "In his mind, June was admitting their son might be gay and having sex with Michael, and that was no big deal." On June 13th, Evan Chandler shared his concerns about the relationship between his son and Michael to a lawyer by the name of Barry Rothman, who was also a patient of Evan's. In exchange for his dental treatment, Rothman offered to help Evan end the relationship by either filing a restraining order against Michael or a custody lawsuit against June. In 1992, Barry Rothman represented a client in a custody battle who accused her estranged partner of molesting their child, which the partner denied. Rothman was later fired by the woman and went on to represent the opposition's company without notifying his former client. For this, he was disciplined by the state's bar. The reasons Evan gave as to hiring his lawyer were somewhat different. Word from word. "This attorney I found, I interviewed several and I picked the nastiest son of a bitch I could find. And all he wants to do is get this out in the public as fast as he can. as big as he can, and humiliate as many people as he can.
This attorney I found, I interviewed several, and I picked the nastiest son of a bitch I could find. Once I make that phone call, this guy is just going to destroy everybody in sight, any devious, nasty, cruel way that he can do it. And I've given him full authority to do that. It'll be a massacre if I don't get what I want.
On Father's Day in 1993, Jordan refused to call his father, and whenever Evan called him, he refused to speak to him. A couple of days later, Jordy still wouldn't speak to his dad, so Evan threatened June over the phone. On July 7th, 1993, Evan left the following message on June's answering machine. It's Wednesday, July 7th. June, make sure you play this message for Michael and Jordy. I'm going to repeat that. June, make sure you replay this message for Michael and Jordy. All three of you are responsible for what is going on. No one is a neutral party. Since Jordy has repeatedly refused to return my phone calls, this will be my last voluntary attempt to communicate. I will be at your house at San Lorenzo this Friday, July 9th at 8:30 in the morning. Take my word for it, there is nothing else any of you has to do that is more important than being at this meeting. And because of this, David Schwartz proceeded to tape the next few telephone conversations he had with Evan, in which Evan threatened to destroy Michael with the help of a plot he carefully prepared and with people who are only waiting for his phone call to set everything in motion.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen. Yeah. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want, and they will be destroyed forever. They will be destroyed. June is going to lose Jordy. She will have no right to ever see him again. Yeah. That's a fact, Dave. That's what's going to happen. Does that help? Career will be over. Does that help Jordy? Michael's career will be over. And does that help Jordy? That's irrelevant to me.
Now let's take a step back and acknowledge the suspicions that Evan Chandler was supposed to have had that led him to believing his son was being abused by Michael Jackson. These are of course alleged and come directly from Ray Chandler's book, All That Glitters, as mentioned previously. Many stories and statements within this book have been proven false, but to this day we don't have as detailed of an account of the Chandler's claims against Michael Jackson as we have in this book. Accounts described by Ray Chandler in his book present an odd interpretation of events by Evan. It was claimed that it was Jordan's mother, June, and her husband, David, that originally had concerns over the nature of their son's relationship with the singer, but they had soon quote-unquote forgot due to the star power of Michael Jackson. June had supposedly developed concern in February of 1993 when the family travelled to Neverland with Michael in a limo accompanied by another young boy. Ray states in his book that June observed Michael giving another boy quote-unquote soft lingering kisses. Ray Chandler didn't name the other child in the limo, but archives prove that the extra passenger was in fact Brett Barnes. When June was asked about this trip in Michael's 2005 trial, she recited that she witnessed Michael giving a young boy soft, lingering kisses without describing it as uncomfortable or disturbing. Not only this, but she also described Brett Barnes being sat beside Michael and not on his lap like described in Ray Chandler's book. Brett Barnes was a regular at Neverland and stayed in close contact with Michael into his adulthood. In fact, Brett was interviewed by police multiple times in 1993 and quit his job in Australia to fly to the US to testify in support of Michael in 2005. Both times he categorically denied any sexual misconduct or abuse having taken place at the hands of the singer, followed by his mother and his sister who also attended in support of Michael. Also coming from Ray Chandler, the next time June grew concerned was the trip to Las Vegas in March of 1993. In her 2005 testimony, June recalls the night Michael and Jordan went to see a Cirque du Soleil show, and when they returned to the Mirage Hotel, Michael pleaded with June to let Jordan stay in his room with him. According to her, he was sobbing, crying, shaking, and trembling until she gave Jordan permission to stay with him. However, Jordan Chandler's own story contradicts his mother's 2005 testimony. Psychiatrist Dr. Richard Gardner conducted an interview with Jordan on October 6 of 1993, 2 months after the allegations against Michael officially dropped. Jordan recounted a night in which he and Michael watched The Exorcist in Michael's room. Michael had eventually offered for Jordan to stay in his room due to the movie having scared him, and it wasn't until the day after in which June found out about this, and a confrontation took place between the singer and the mother. June Chandler's cross-examination by Michael's lawyer Tom Mesereau revealed that the conversation Michael and June had on that trip revolved around trust issues, and that Michael did in fact cry. Not because June wouldn't let Jordan sleep in the same bed as Michael, but because Michael felt that June didn't trust him. June also confirmed that it was Jordan who insisted it was okay to stay the night in Michael's room and wanted to. In these testimonies regarding Jordan's story of that night, there is no case of physical contact between Jordan and Michael. According to Ray Chandler's book, June didn't tell Evan about the Brett Barnes scenario on the Las Vegas trip until later into the year, so these stories could not have been a foundation for Evan's suspicions. Furthering this, the book describes how June actually dismissed Evan's initial speculation that Michael was abusing Jordan. The first time Evan met Michael was at June's house, in which he saw the amount of presents that the singer had bestowed upon the family. However, according to the book, the main thing that truly disturbed Evan was the set of plastic army men and other toys he deemed to be inappropriate for a boy of Jordan's age, stating that not even his little brother played with them anymore. He believed they were fit for younger children and that his son shouldn't be playing with toys. Ray also described a moment in which Evan, one day after meeting, asked Michael the following: "Are you fucking my son up the ass?" To which Michael apparently responded with a childish giggle and said he didn't like to use that word. This was an out-of-the-blue question and brings up questions about Evan's preconceived ideas of Michael or of his own son. Once again, this is just Ray Chandler's claims. There is no way to prove that this interaction ever took place, regardless of questioning why Evan would ever say anything like that to begin with. It may not have even happened. Once again, in Ray's book, Michael is described staying over at Evan's house from May 22nd to May the 23rd, where Michael was to have supposedly told him that he did not like June, and that he wanted to live with Geordie and Evan in the latter's house. He then went on to allegedly say that he'd happily build an extension off of Evan's house so he could live in it. However, a GQ article published in 1994 revealed that sources claimed that it was Evan who suggested Michael made alterations to his house, but once the zoning agent informed him that those alterations couldn't be done, Evan has suggested an alternative, that Michael build him a whole new house. And this exact version was confirmed by June herself in the 2005 testimony. The months leading up to the allegations, Evan was still working as a dentist in LA, as mentioned before. In fact, a very famous face can recall a time in which Evan was her dentist. In the late Carrie Fisher's autobiography, Shockaholic, she recalls a particular appointment that made her squirm in her seat. But remember that dentist who sued Michael for molesting his kid? Yes, that was my dentist. Evan Chandler, DDS dentist to the stars. And this same Dr. Chandler, long before the lawsuit was brought, though not necessarily before he was contemplated, needed someone to brag about his son's burgeoning friendship with Michael Jackson. This was years before Michael had children of his own. And so my dentist would go on and on about how much his son liked Michael Jackson, and more important, how much Michael Jackson liked his son. And the most disturbing thing I remember him saying was, "You know, my son is very good looking." Now I ask you, what father talks about his child that way? Well, maybe some do, but A, I don't know them, and B, they probably aren't raising an eyebrow and looking suggestive when they say it. Over the years, I've heard many proud fathers tell me, "My son is great," or "My kid is adorable," but this was the only time I'd ever heard this particular boast. My son, unlike most average male offspring, is very unsettling smile, raised eyebrows, maybe even a lewd wink, good looking. Pause for you to reflect and or puke. It was grotesque. This man was letting me know that he had this valuable thing that he assumed Michael Jackson wanted, and it happened to be his son. But it wasn't who his son was, it was what he was. Good looking. Shortly after this interaction, Evan announced to Fisher that he was going to sue Michael. Now I know for a fact that when this first started happening, the good doctor saw no problem with this odd bunking. Excuse me, he had been creepy enough to have allowed all this to happen, and now he's suddenly shocked, virtually consumed with moral indignation. Can you believe it? I think Michael may have even put his hand on my child's privates. Well, what was this man thinking in the first place? Why did he encourage him to sleep in the same bed as Michael Jackson to begin with? He did it because he knew, somewhere, he would eventually be able to say, "Oh my God, I suddenly realised that this thing between Michael and my son is weird. I'm horrified. My son may have been damaged, and the only thing that can repair this damage is many millions of dollars. Then he'll be okay. And we're not going to buy anything for ourselves with that money. It's all going towards our son being okay." This was around the time that I knew I had to find another dentist. No drug can hide the fact that one's skin is crawling. The thing is though, I never thought that Michael's whole thing with kids was sexual. Never. Granted, it was miles from appropriate, but just because it wasn't normal doesn't mean that it had to be perverse. Those aren't the only two choices for what can happen between an adult and an unrelated child spending time together. Even if that adult has had too much plastic surgery and what would appear to be tattooed makeup on his face. And yes, he had an amusement park, a zoo, a movie theatre, popcorn, candy and an elephant. But to draw a line under all that and add it up to the assumption that he fiendishly rubbed his hands together as he assembled this giant super spiderweb to lure and trap kids into it is just bad math. But wait, check this out. Let's say your really good-looking son started hanging out with this odd-looking famous multimillionaire that could maybe be persuaded to give you $22 million if you threatened to tell everyone in the world that he touched your son's underage, maybe not even fully grown yet member. Well, I don't know what you do, but when my dentist was presented with a choice between integrity and $22 million, you'll never guess what he did. That's right, he went for the cash. But hey, he was only human-ish, right? But really, who could blame him? I mean, besides you and me and anyone else alive who cares about ruining their kid's life, who else could blame Dr. Chandler for what he did? I'll wait while you think. Despite having no evidence or sufficient reason to believe it, it seems that Evan expected a sexual relationship to come from Michael's friendship with Geordie, which makes sense when you think about how he wanted Michael to build an extension for him to live there. That way, Evan has the access to an entertainer like Michael at all times. Sick to think about, but what could you expect from a man who raises his eyebrows suggestively whilst calling his own 13-year-old son good looking? The last time Michael was at Evan's house, late May of 1993, Evan's wife started raising questions about the relationship between Michael and Geordie, according to Ray's book. This is where the idea of them being physical together came from somebody other than Evan. Once again, this is allegedly. We don't know if everything that is being told here by Ray is entirely true. The morning after this, Evan allegedly asked Geordie if there was anything intimate going on between him and Michael, to which Geordie responded with, "That's disgusting, I'm not even into that." To which his father simply replied, "Just kidding." Evan claimed he felt relief after witnessing Geordie's repulsion, but despite this, he didn't give up. That morning, Michael was complaining about a strong headache. We know from the AEG trial in 2013 that he had had a scalp surgery a couple of weeks prior due to the long-lasting effects of the injuries he suffered from the 1984 Pepsi commercial accident where his hair caught on fire. Evan Chandler provided Michael with aspirin and Tylenol, but they did not seem to work on him. Evan then called his anesthesiologist, Mark Taubiner, who soon after arrived at the house with some Toradol, a non-narcotic equivalent to Demerol. At least, that's what Ray Chandler's book claimed was administered. According to their story, Evan injected Michael with 30 milligrams of Toradol, but once again failed to see any success with easing the pain, so he eventually injected another 30 milligrams. Carrie Fisher detailed in her book how Evan Chandler and his anesthesiologist were the type to abuse medication. But getting back to the special medical access I mentioned earlier, I had a dentist at the time, a Dr. Evan Chandler, who was a very strange character. He was what would be referred to as the dentist to the stars. And as one of the people who would have unnecessary dental work just for the morphine, this man was one of those people who could arrange such a welcome service. He referred his patients to a mobile anesthesiologist who would come into the office and put you out for the dental work. And if that wasn't glorious enough, this anesthesiologist could be easily financially persuaded to come to your house to administer the morphine for your subsequent luxury pain relief. And I would extend my arms, veins akimbo, and say to this man, "Send me away, but don't send me all the way." According to Ray Chandler, these 2 doses of Toradol caused Michael to show drunk-like symptoms, and once he had sobered up somewhat but still uninhibited, Evan took this opportunity to ask Michael about his sexuality, more specifically whether or not he was gay. Michael said he was not. According to the book, Michael stayed in bed all day, and despite Evan's claim that he was suspicious of Michael molesting his son, he still put the drugged-up singer to sleep in his 2 sons' bedroom. Later into the night, it is said that Geordie climbed into bed with Michael and fell asleep next to him, and this supposedly unsettled Evan. However, Evan didn't do anything about this troubled feeling he was having about Michael. He simply walked out of the room and kept this story to himself. One interesting conversation that Evan is said to have had with Geordie came from Evan asking his son what he would do if he asked him not to go on tour with Michael. Geordie allegedly answered with, "I'll go anyway," and proceeded to ask his father to give him a good reason why he shouldn't join Michael on tour. Evan responded with, "What if I said you could be dead in 5 years if you went on tour?" Geordie looked puzzled. "Well, of course, I don't want to die, but why would I?" And Evan replied with, "Because you guys lied to me, and you know how much I hate liars. You're not going on the tour, now let's go, I'm taking you home." Back to the main timeline, rightfully David Schwartz and June Chandler played the tape of Evan threatening to destroy Michael to Anthony Pellicano, a private investigator working for Michael's lawyer Bertram Fields. Pellicano met with Jordan in Michael's Century City condo the same day. Without Michael present, he proceeded to ask Jordan some very specific questions about whether he has ever been molested or inappropriately touched by Michael. Each of Jordan's answers were that nothing inappropriate has ever been done to him by Michael. And according to Pellicano, Jordan also said his father only wanted money. A couple of days later, Jordan was sent to his father's house for his usual 1-week visitation, but Evan refused to return Jordan to his mother when it came time for him to leave. Evan Chandler had June sign a document prepared by Barry Rothman, his lawyer, that prevented her from taking their son out of the Los Angeles County and letting him meet Michael Jackson. Along with this, the document also stated that June must cancel the $68,804 that Evan owed her in child support. Evan's clutch was that he would never let June see Jordan again if she didn't sign this document. Around mid-July of 1993, Evan Chandler and Barry Rothman contacted a Beverly Hills psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Mathis Abrams, presenting him with a hypothetical situation about child molestation. Abrams, without having met Jordan or Michael, sent Rothman a letter which he stated that reasonable suspicion would exist that sexual abuse may have occurred. Evan Chandler later used this as a negotiation tool with June and with Michael. According to Ray Chandler, it was around this time that Jordan had confessed to Evan about the alleged sexual molestation, one day before Evan was required to return Jordan to June. The circumstances of this alleged confession are very problematic, and I must warn you, the following details may be very disturbing and unsettling. According to some sources, Jordan was administered the controversial drug sodium amytal in his father's dental practice. Sodium amytal is a drug that studies have shown can make the human mind suggestible. Theories about this surround false memories being implanted in Jordan's mind. Furthermore, the drug sodium amytal was found in Evan Chandler's office, even though there is no reason whatsoever to have this drug in a dental practice. However, I must say there are reasons to doubt this theory, as possible as it is. In August, Evan set up a meeting where he read passages from the letter that Dr. Mathis Abrams penned to Michael and his team. When the segments on child molestation came up, Anthony Pellicano stated that Jordan put his head down and then looked up at Jackson with a surprised expression as if to say, "I didn't say that." In this situation, Jordan seems to recall what he didn't say, so there's no indication that his mind had been altered by sodium amytal. According to Pellicano, Jordan was acting embarrassed and guilty about the accusations Evan made. During the 2005 trial, Michael's attorney, Thomas Mazzaro, said he had witnesses who, if Jordan testified in the case, would tell the jury that Jordan privately confided in them that Michael never molested him. This also supports a theory of Jordan's mind not being manipulated by the use of sodium amytal. Ray Chandler did admit that Jordan was sedated on July 16th for a minor dental procedure, but denied that sodium amytal was used. However, Evan's assistant made ambiguous statements that suggested otherwise. The use of this drug is still unknown, but bears worth thinking about. On July 20th, 1993, June Chandler and David Schwartz met Evan's attorney Barry Rothman. During the meeting, Dr. Mathis Abrams' letter was shown to them and demanded that they sign a document that would transfer custody of Jordan from June to Evan. A week later, according to a book written by Barry Rothman's legal secretary, Geraldine Hughes, Rothman wrote a letter to Evan advising him how to report child abuse without liability to the parent. On August 4th, a meeting took place between Michael Jackson, Anthony Pellicano, Evan Chandler, and Jordan Chandler at the Westwood Marquis Hotel. Later that day, Evan Chandler and Barry Rothman met Pellicano in Rothman's office where they made a demand for $20 million. If Michael agreed to this, they would not go public with the allegations of child sexual abuse against him. Logically, if your child had been abused so horrifically by somebody, surely you would want to make sure that this perpetrator is behind bars as quickly as possible. Money can't buy off your child's trauma. People often bring this up as an indication of his guilt, when in reality Michael could have paid them off before the accusations went public if shutting them up was his true intention. It was actually Evan Chandler who never wanted to get lawyers involved in the first place. He was adamant that he could get what he wanted just by sitting with Michael and negotiating, as he liked to call it. He even refrained from using the word molestation in his claims against Michael. See, Michael and his team understood that he was being accused of child molestation, even though Evan didn't make that accusation himself. At the Westwood Marquis Hotel, Evan only read Dr. Abrams' letter without making any accusations in his own words. It said that Evan and his attorney Barry Rothman were trying to ensure that Evan could not be sued later should the allegation be proven to be false. Barry Rothman informed Anthony Pellicano that Evan did not make any public statements of defamatory remarks about Michael, so Evan could not be sued if the allegations turned out to be incorrect. In Ray Chandler's book, Pelicano allegedly called Rothman and told him that they had worked everything out and that Michael was going to help Geordie and his father re-establish their relationship by setting up a screenwriting career for them so they could spend time doing what they loved best. This conversation was what Evan brought up first at that meeting on August 4th, but Pelicano denied ever making the offer and made it clear that he was not willing to offer Evan anything. But where did the sum of $20 million come from, you ask? Why that much? There have been speculations. The Los Angeles Times wrote film industry sources have said that the boy's father saw a $20 million movie production and financing deal with Jackson. A friend of Michael's, painter David Nordal, elaborated on that in an interview he did with the Reflections on the Dance website in 2010. I was working on sketches for Jackson's film company called Lost Boys Productions. Sony had given Michael $40 million to start this production company, and that little boy's dad, who considered himself to be show business material because he had written a script, after that he considered himself a Hollywood screenwriter, and being friends with Michael and his son being friends with Michael, this guy had assumed that Michael was going to make him a partner in this film production company, and that's where the $20 million figure came from. He wanted half of that Sony money. It was proven. It was extortion. Michael listened to his business advisors and they all told him to keep his mouth shut and go on to Korea. Go on with your tour. You're in the middle of a tour. We'll take care of it. On August 16th of 1993, June Chandler's attorney called Barry Rothman and told him that she would appear in court the next day to obtain an order demanding the immediate return of Geordie to her. The court ordered Evan to return Geordie to June and for the document he made June sign on July 12th to be overturned. In the motion that Evan Chandler files against the order, he never once mentioned any suspicion of sexual abuse by Michael Jackson. August 17th marked the deadline that the court set for Evan to return Geordie to June. Geordie had been with his father for more than a month at this point, and as an answer to the court order and frustrated by Michael's refusal to pay him off, Evan took Jordan to Dr. Mathis Abrams, where Geordie made detailed allegations for the first time. This was what triggered the criminal investigation against Michael, but it also triggered the court to allow Evan to keep Geordie in his guardianship rather than return him to June. On August 19th, June's attorney met with Evan's attorney. June is now on Evan's side. The Department of Children's Services reported that mother stated if Geordie had said it, it must be true. Despite this change of heart, Ray Chandler claimed in his book that June had previously said she felt that Evan had brainwashed their son. On the same day, Michael requested for the second leg of his Dangerous World tour to be pulled out or postponed, understanding the seriousness of the allegations against him. Over the years, this has been skewed as Michael leaving on his tour instead in order to avoid any arrest warrant in the US. Whilst Michael was out of the United States, multiple search warrants were carried out on his properties in LA, Neverland and his Century City condo, and a hotel room at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. A few days after these search warrants were carried out, the Los Angeles Times wrote that videotapes seized from the homes belonging to Michael Jackson do not incriminate the entertainer, and the lack of physical evidence of alleged sexual molestation has left investigators scrambling to get statements from other potential victims, a high-ranking police source said Thursday. There's no medical evidence, no taped evidence, the source said. The search warrant didn't result in anything that would support a criminal filing. On August 23rd, the first ever report about the allegations against Michael came out in the media. The day after reports started spreading, a meeting occurred in Barry Rothman's office with Evan Chandler, June Chandler, David Schwartz and Michael Freeman, Rothman's legal secretary. Rothman's legal secretary, Geraldine Hughes, claimed in her book again that she overheard Evan say, "I almost had a $20 million deal." It wasn't long before somebody illegally leaked a copy of the abuse report to the TV show Hard Copy. Between August 25th and 30th of 1993, Michael had to cancel 2 shows in Bangkok due to dehydration and 1 show in Singapore after collapsing out of exhaustion backstage. Also during this time, Jordan and Evan spent all day and night in Rothman's office to avoid the press. Geraldine Hughes once again mentions in a book that she overheard Evan say, "It's my assets on the line and in danger of going to prison." Towards the end of the month, Barry Rothman stopped representing the Chandlers after Michael filed extortion charges against him and Evan Chandler. According to Geraldine Hughes' book, Chandler and Rothman continued to put their heads together to plan their next moves. Evan continued to call the office 4 or 5 times a day to speak to Rothman, who was in turn giving Evan advice on every move. If we had to believe what Geraldine Hughes is saying, then it would seem that Evan worked the system every step of the way, using Barry Rothman, who the former claimed was the nastiest in the business, to help strategize. If Michael was in fact guilty of these horrific crimes, a well-established and very wealthy doctor would not need to go to such lengths to try and incriminate him, let alone try and get a settlement worth millions. Once again, I ask the question, what amount of money is worth more than your son's safety and jailing his abuser? To replace Rothman, the Chandlers then went ahead and hired celebrity attorney Gloria Allred. On September 2nd, Allred gave a press conference where she made false promises that the accuser, Jordan Chandler, was willing to testify in court against Michael Jackson. Upon learning this, the Chandlers fired Allred a few days after and replaced her with a civil attorney, Larry Feldman, referred to by Barry Rothman. Ray Chandler claims this was because the family wanted to steer the case towards a highly profitable settlement, rather than a grand jury indictment and a criminal trial. In the same week, David Schwartz and Evan Chandler had gotten into a heated confrontation during a meeting with the Chandlers and their lawyers over the potential settlement money that they hadn't even received yet. Schwartz supposedly demanded $4 million, even though the Chandlers didn't want him to be included in Jordan's complaint. During the argument, Evan punched Schwartz, soon to be separated by several of the lawyers present in the room. In the same month, Evan Chandler filed a lawsuit against June Chandler and David Schwartz for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy. Evan complained about David recording their telephone conversations and giving them to a third party, Anthony Pellicano, and that some of the recordings found their way to the media. David Schwartz filed a cross-complaint, suing Evan likewise for invasion of privacy and intentional infliction of emotional distress. On September 14th, 1993, Larry Feldman filed a $30 million civil lawsuit against Michael Jackson, accusing him of sexual battery, seduction, willful misconduct, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and negligence. On September 21st, the National Enquirer ran a story about Michael Jackson having been seen kissing and cuddling a boy in a disturbing way in a limousine on the way to Disneyland. The paper cited an unnamed observer for the source. This story, including some of the exact same expressions, can be found in Ray Chandler's book. And in his book, he revealed that the supposed witness of the scene was June Chandler. From June's 2005 testimony, we know that the boy in question was Brett Barnes, and like mentioned earlier, she did not describe the scene as disturbing. Both Ray Chandler and the Enquirer sensationalized and juiced up the story. This points to the possibility that the Chandlers were in contact with some of the tabloid media and fed them with stories while the investigation was ongoing. On October 6, Jordan was taken to psychiatrist Dr. Richard Gardner, who conducted an interview with him. This interview was leaked to the public in February of 2003 and was the root for all following allegations that I will go into in separate videos. But this interview is the only detailed account we have of allegations coming from Jordan himself. However, we know by now that he has been fed all these details for the past 7 months. Michael Jackson was still on tour in October but cancelled a show in Chile on the 21st and then several more dates of his Dangerous World Tour due to serious health problems. On October 28th, Michael's attorney, Bert Fields, wrote a letter to the LAPD complaining about their methods of trying to manipulate children into saying incriminating things about Michael. Police had interviewed 40 to 60 children who they found had spent time with Michael or at his Neverland ranch. No one corroborated the accuser's story. All children interviewed said nothing appropriate or suspicious ever happened or was inflicted on them by Michael Jackson. Going into November, a fourth search warrant was carried out. This time it was for the Havenhurst home of the Jackson family in Encino, California. This was where Michael's parents lived, and nothing incriminating was found during the search. Michael's last performance on his tour was in Mexico on November 11th of 1993. The remaining dates of his tour were cancelled because Michael had developed a dependency on painkillers. He sought out treatment in Europe, it's theorised in London, with the help of Elizabeth Taylor and Elton John. 4 days later, Michael's attorney held a press conference confirming that he was undergoing treatment for a painkiller dependency. He said Michael was barely able to function on an intellectual level. He would not share his whereabouts and then added that Michael had no intention of avoiding going to the US. The media doubted the dependency claim and made suggestions that Michael was running and hiding from the law, even though he wasn't charged with anything, nor was an arrest warrant issued against him at this point, nor at any time during the case. As all of this was unfolding about Michael, the Chandler's lawyer filed a motion for trial preference, which is a special request to have the civil trial heard within 120 days after the motion is granted. This request is usually given to children under the age of 14. In other words, the accuser's side was working hard on getting the civil trial ahead of the criminal proceedings. They were pushing the settlement before any kind of criminal indictment. Amid the media chaos and doubt surrounding Michael Jackson's painkiller dependency and whereabouts, the doctor who treated Michael during this time, Dr. Beecham Colclough, released a statement confirming the treatment and refuted the media rumours about Michael hiding out, his cosmetic surgery, and that he was suicidal by stating that no other medical, surgical or psychological condition exists. This is where we start to see more people coming forward about their supposed experiences with Michael at the height of media coverage on him. 5 former bodyguards of the Jackson family, Leroy Thomas, Maurice Williams, Donald Starks, Fred Hammond, and Aaron White, filed a civil lawsuit against Michael on November 22nd, claiming they were fired because they knew too much about this relationship with young boys. They asked for $10 million in their lawsuit, but didn't actually work for Michael, but for his family in Havenhurst. They appeared on the tabloid TV show Hard Copy with their story. Later documents revealed negotiations for $100,000 between the show and the bodyguards. They never reported any of this to the authorities. In fact, in depositions given to the police, they admitted they never saw anything inappropriate. The bodyguard's lawsuit was thrown out of court in July of 1995. Since then, multiple ex-employees of Michael's made allegations against him in the media, including Ralph Jacon, Kasim Abdul, Adrian McManus, Philip and Stella Lemarque, Bob Jones and Stacey Brown. That's not including Blanca Francia, who made thousands off of Michael's name in the 90s. These people listed were used by the prosecution as witnesses against Michael during his 2005 trial. Towards the end of November, friction rose in Michael's team of attorneys when Burt Fields told reporters that a criminal indictment seemed imminent, which turned out to be false. Michael's other attorney, Howard Weitzman, told reporters that Fields just misspoke, to which Fields clarified that his words were mainly to do with the fact that Michael's team were fighting against the Chandlers' efforts to bring the civil proceedings ahead of the criminal proceedings. Judge David M. Rothman denied a request by Michael's attorneys in which they attempted to postpone the civil lawsuit to allow the criminal proceedings to be held ahead of the civil proceedings. The civil trial court date was then set for March 21st of 1994. On November 26, police raided the offices of Michael's dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein, and plastic surgeon, Dr. Steve Hofflin, confiscating medical records in the process. A week later, Michael signed a letter to Burt Fields ousting him as leading attorney for the civil case. The week after that, Michael returned to the United States. 3 days after Michael's return, Burt Fields officially resigned and left the case completely. After his resignation, Michael was represented by Howard Weitzman and the newly joined Johnny Cochran. Anthony Pellicano also left and publicly stated that he was convinced of Michael's innocence and his leaving the case was no indication of otherwise. On December 15th, Blanca Francia, who I briefly mentioned earlier, and who worked as a maid between 1986 and 1991 for Michael, appeared on hard copy claiming she witnessed improprieties towards young boys by Michael during her employment. Before the Chandler allegations, she never mentioned these alleged events to anybody, nor did she report them to authorities. At Michael's 2005 trial, Francia admitted that she had been paid $20,000 by hard copy for the interview, which was then her yearly salary. On the same day as her interview airing, she was deposed for the Chandler civil case. A day before she spoke to the Los Angeles Times, the article mentioned her upcoming hard copy interview, so we know it was recorded before December 14. During her testimony at Michael's 2005 trial, she admitted that she also contemplated selling her story to the National Enquirer. This never came to be though, because apparently the police put her under wraps after the hard copy interview. On December 20th, Michael was strip searched. His entire body, including his genitalia, was photographed and videotaped by authorities to compare it with the description the accuser gave of Michael's private parts. Based on the body search, no arrest warrant was issued. District Attorney Thomas Snedden later claimed during Michael's 2005 trial that Jordan's description of Michael's body matched. A week before that trial ended, he attempted to introduce Jordan's description and drawing, as well as the photographs taken during the search. His motion claimed that there was a blemish on Michael's genitalia in the quote-unquote same relative location as the mark located by Jordan Chandler on his drawing. This one mark is all Snedden's motion mentioned. Nothing about any other features in either Jordan's description or on the photos. It's because out of the whole description he could only find one mark as matching, despite him only claiming they were relatively the same place. The timing of Snedden introducing this into court seemed to be a last-minute attempt to try and prejudice the jury after other stories on the trial fell apart, and the fact that Jordan Chandler refused to testify in 2005, meaning he couldn't be cross-examined. Judge Rodney Melville did not allow the introduction of this material. Initial media reports after the 1993 strip search cited law enforcement sources saying that the boy's description didn't match the photographs taken of Michael. The claim that they did match the description spread through the media only later, particularly after an interview Snedden gave in Vanity Fair in 1995. Something even more concerning, Dr. Richard Strick, a doctor who was present at the strip search in 1993, indicated in an interview with Fox News in October of 2009 that he didn't come to a conclusion on his own, but rather somebody else told him later that it was a match. To quote him, "The genitalia were very oddly coloured with dark skin and light skin, and I was told later that the deposition and the photos that were taken absolutely matched with what the child had described." As a medical professional hired by the authorities, you'd expect that he would have been asked to determine a match. We don't know who told him there was a match, but every claim of this nature points to Snedden as a source. However, Snedden is not a credible or unbiased source, given his decade-long malice against Michael Jackson. An example of this was in Michael's 2005 trial, where he made many claims in his motions, which were then proven to be false on the stand, often by his own witnesses, and it became clear that his motions were often deceptive. Putting aside every detail of this event, the fact that no arrest warrant was issued after the strip search and that Michael was indicted by any of the two grand juries which were convened against him indicates that there was no match at all. However, there are further indications that I will go over. In early January of 1994, Larry Feldman, the civil attorney representing Jordan Chandler, filed a motion with the civil court that contained a multiple choice request. On January 5th, the Los Angeles Times reported that Feldman had filed this motion, meaning Michael may provide copies of the police photographs, submit to a second search, or the court may bar the photographs from the civil trial as evidence. so Jordan's attorney sought to get the photographs barred from the civil trial as evidence. Feldman claimed he filed this motion because both Michael's attorneys and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office refused to give him copies of the photographs. Realistically, if Feldman was certain his client was telling the truth, surely he wouldn't be going to such lengths to bar the photographic evidence from the trial, as they would support and not harm the case. If anything, he should have been fighting for those photos to be introduced into the court and not barred. This suggests that the photos gave no resemblance to Jordan's description that would incriminate Michael. There are lots of other instances that suggest that the photos and Jordan's description don't match, but this video would be longer than it already is. I will link the archives and articles in the description. On December 22nd of 1993, Michael released that video statement talking about the strip search and how humiliating it was for him, and of course, maintaining his innocence.
My deepest gratitude for your love and support. I am doing well and I am strong. As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. This medication was initially prescribed to see the excruciating pain that I was suffering after recent reconstructive surgery on my scalp. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected. I shall not in this statement respond to all of the false allegations being made against me, since my lawyers have advised me that this is not the proper forum in which to do that. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis, my buttocks, my lower torso, thighs, and any other area that they wanted. They were supposedly looking for any discoloration, spotting, blotches, or other evidence of a skin color disorder called vitiligo, which I have previously spoken about. The warrant also directed me to cooperate in any examination of my body by their physician to determine the condition of my skin, including whether I have vitiligo or any other skin disorder. The warrant further stated that I had no right to refuse the examination or photographs, and if I failed to cooperate with them, they would introduce that refusal at any trial as an indication of my guilt. It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life, one that no person should ever have to suffer. And even after experiencing the indignity of this search, the parties involved were still not satisfied and wanted to take even more pictures. It was a nightmare, a horrifying nightmare. But if this is what I have to endure to prove my innocence, my complete innocence, so be it. Throughout my life, I have only tried to help thousands upon thousands of children to live happy lives. It brings tears to my eyes when I see any child who suffers. I am not guilty of these allegations, but if I am guilty of anything, it is of giving all that I have to give to help children all over the world. It is of loving children of all ages and races. It is of gaining sheer joy from seeing children with their innocent and smiling faces. It is of enjoying through them the childhood that I missed myself. If I am guilty of anything, it is of believing what God said about children. Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. In no way do I think that I am God, but I do try to be God-like in my heart. I am totally innocent of any wrongdoing, and I know these terrible allegations will all be proven false. Again, to my friends And fans, thank you very much for all of your support. Together, we will see this through to the very end. I love you very much, and may God bless you all. I love you. Goodbye.
A week after this video was released, Marcel Avram, the owner of the Munich-based Mama Concerts company, filed a lawsuit against Michael seeking $20 million after the cancellation of his tour. The same day, on December 28th, Jordan Chandler gave a declaration about his allegations. This declaration was also leaked to the public in 2003. 2 days later, the Chandler's attorney filed a motion to compel Michael to answer a list of questions for the civil suit. These were a set of over 100 questions that asked for information about each person under the age of 18 that Michael had entertained since January 1st, 1983. The same day, the judge denied Michael's motion for a gag order. According to Ray Chandler's book, the Chandlers were worried about the prospect of a gag order and that they would not be able to talk to the media and influence public opinion if a gag order was issued. Going into the new year, Larry Feldman filed the motion to give Michael the multiple choice request. Days later, he asked the court for access to Michael's financial records in a motion that stated, quote-unquote, "He is a millionaire hundreds of times over whose assets are tied up in intangibles. Plaintiff will need the 3 months remaining before the trial date to be able to track down these assets to come up with an approximation of their worth." As a part of his motion, he also filed Jordan's late December declaration. According to Howard Weitzman, Michael's lawyer, this was a PR move by Feldman because it contained nothing new compared to the allegations that had already been detailed in August, so it only served as a counterpunch in reaction to Michael's statement video. In mid-January of 1994, the judge postponed Michael's deposition scheduled for January 18th and 2 hearings on Feldman's motions. The hearings were rescheduled for January 25th, and Michael was ordered to give his deposition between January 25th and February 1st. 10 days later, the prosecutor's office announced that they declined to file charges against Evan Chandler for extortion as Michael's attorneys retracted the complaint, preparing for the settlement that would be signed the next day. As a part of the settlement agreement, Michael had to agree to withdraw the extortion charges. The investigation of the extortion allegation by Michael was never given the same attention and effort by the authorities as the child molestation allegations against Michael. They never subpoenaed any witnesses, no search warrants were issued, and not much at all was done with the extortion charges. January 25th, 1994 marked the day that an out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil case between Michael Jackson and the Chandler family. The settlement was illegally leaked to Court TV's Diane Diamond in 2003, and from that document we know the amount paid into a trust for Geordie Chandler was $15,331,250. The criminal investigation, however, was ongoing. Both sides stated, and it is also stated in the settlement itself, that the settlement was in no way an admission of guilt by Michael Jackson. Los Angeles District Attorney Gil Garcetti maintained that the settlement did not affect the criminal investigation. The settlement also did not prevent Jordan Chandler from testifying in any criminal case. Within days of the settlement, Jordan's uncle Ray Chandler began shopping a book about the allegations that would be released in 2004 amid the media frenzy caused by the allegations made against Michael in 2003. On March 17th, Michael's mother, Katherine Jackson, was subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury in Los Angeles. Michael's attorney stated that he'd never seen the mother of the accused called before the grand jury and that it was done in a poor taste and bordered on harassment. Prosecutors sought information from Katherine about whether Michael changed the appearance of his genitalia, as it did not match the description given to them by Jordan. During the time frame of February to April of 1994, the hearings of the Santa Barbara and Los Angeles grand jury on the investigation were held. Both grand juries disbanded without indicting Michael. Despite this, investigators refused to close the case and still tried to convince Jordan Chandler to testify. Michael requested the return of the photographs taken during his body search, but the request was denied. In May of that year, Evan Chandler closed down his Beverly Hills dental office, and in July, Jordan Chandler informed investigators that he is not willing to testify. In August, David Schwartz sued Evan Chandler, but then later in August he also sued Michael, claiming he and his daughter were traumatized by the allegations. He and June Chandler divorced that year. Santa Barbara District Attorney Thomas Sneddon and Los Angeles District Attorney Gil Garcetti made an official statement on September 21st regarding the status of the investigation. They informed the public that Jordan Chandler was unwilling to testify, therefore they are unable to file charges. Gil Garcetti admitted that the 18-month investigation did not lead to anything incriminating against Michael Jackson, as well as stating that he is presumed to be innocent as any citizen if they are not convicted with a crime. Tom Sneddon, however, claimed that there were 2 more alleged victims, but were just unwilling to testify. Later, it became clear that one of these 2 other alleged victims was Jason Francia, who was pressured by the prosecution into making allegations against Michael. He testified in the 2005 trial and was deemed not credible. Based on what Sneddon revealed about the other alleged victim, it seems to be Brett Barnes, who has always relentlessly stated that Michael never did anything inappropriate to him. On July 4th of 1995, Jordan Chandler officially emancipated himself from his parents. He went on to live with Evan's second wife, who by that time had divorced Evan, and his 2 younger siblings from that second marriage. On May 7th of 1996, Evan Chandler filed another civil lawsuit against Michael, Michael's first wife Lisa Marie Presley, ABC Capital Broadcasting and others for allegedly breaching the confidentiality agreement of the 1994 settlement when Michael maintained his innocence in an interview on ABC television channel. This time, Evan demanded more than $60 million from Michael and a record deal so that he could release a musical album about the alleged sexual molestation of his son. Thankfully, the lawsuit got thrown out of court in 2000. The same year, odd allegations surfaced from journalists Victor Gutierrez and Diane Diamond. Flashing forward into 2003, Ray Chandler gave an interview to the National Enquirer praising the paper's accuracy in their report of the 1993 case. There are reasons to believe that some of the tabloid stories at the time were fed by the Chandlers, as I have described previously. In 2004, the settlement agreement between Michael and the Chandlers was illegally leaked to journalist Diane Diamond. We don't know who leaked it, but Ray Chandler called Diamond Evan Chandler's closest ally. The same year, as I have previously mentioned, Ray released his book, and a week later, Michael's defense tried to subpoena him as he was making rounds in the media. Whilst doing interviews, Ray claimed he had documents that proved Michael's guilt. Michael's defense team challenged him to come forward and show those documents in court under oath in order to be cross-examined. However, Ray refused and successfully fought off the subpoena, citing the Shield law that protected him as a journalist. The same month, prosecutors for the 2005 trial visited the now 24-year-old Jordan Chandler in New York to ask him to testify against Michael in the upcoming trial. According to Michael's FBI files released after his death, Jordan refused and advised the prosecutors that he would legally fight any attempt to make him testify against Michael. Later, Michael's lawyer Thomas Mesereau revealed that he had witnesses for the trial who said Jordan privately admitted to them that Michael did not molest him, and had Jordan come to testify, he would have presented those witnesses. In April of 2005, June Chandler appeared in court at Michael's trial as one of the prosecution's witnesses. She admitted she'd not spoken to Jordan for 11 years. She testified about her son and Michael spending time together in 1993, but she never claimed to have witnessed molestation. She was the only member of the Chandler family who ever testified in a court and subjected herself to cross-examination. In August of the same year, Jordan Chandler obtained a temporary restraining order against his father, Evan Chandler, claiming that while they were living in the same household, Evan struck him on the head from behind with a 12.5 pound weight, and then sprayed his eyes with mace or pepper spray and tried to choke him. The judge also found that the weight could cause serious bodily injury or death. On June 26, 2009, the day after Michael Jackson's death, a false story was circulated on the internet about Jordan Chandler recanting his allegations. However, Jordan has never publicly recanted his allegations on any platform whatsoever. And on November 5th, 2009, only 4 months after Michael's death, Evan Chandler ended his own life in his New Jersey home. He didn't leave a note, and it is reported that he died a lonely man, stricken with serious and painful diseases. In his will, Evan ordered that none of his family members be advised of his death until well after his funeral. He also stated that he did not wish to leave anything to any of his 3 children, quoting, "For reasons best known between us, I purposefully make no provision in this. My last will and testament for any of my children or their issue." Whatever your opinion on the Michael Jackson accusations, there is no denying that foul play was at the centre of these contrived allegations against a man with a plentiful bank account. It's clear to see what Evan Chandler's main goal was from the start, and how power-obsessed he really was. And whatever you want to believe about one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood, this early attempt at extortion lies at the root of all further allegations to come against Michael Jackson.
I feel very privileged to be the recipient of this special oneness honor. I believe that all people living together in unity is one of the most important messages we can teach our children. What more can I give? It's just an example for the world of how beautiful the world can be, and what a beautiful place it can be. Sorry I have the hiccups. I have to be honest. I would like to thank personally Casey Porter and the staff members of Oneness whose work on What More Can I Give, and the Spanish version, Todo Para Ti, has been invaluable. I love you, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sorry about the hiccups. Thank you so much. I love you.